Ellie's heart pounded so loudly she swore the chandelier above would shatter. She stood frozen, clutching a glass of champagne, as her cousin's voice sliced through the glittering Harvard party. "You're embarrassing us, Ellie. Go sit by the toilet where you belong." The room didn't stop, but it felt like it had. Every eye in the opulent hall searing into her soul. It was supposed to be a celebration. Her cousin Mark had just landed a prestigious fellowship, and the Harvard Faculty Club was alive with clinking glasses, polished laughter, and the kind of intellectual banter that made Ellie, a graphic designer from a small town in Ohio, feel like an imposter. She'd worn her best dress, a deep emerald number that hugged her curves, hoping to blend in. But when Mark caught her stealing a glance at a woman across the room, a glance too long, too soft, erupted. His words weren't just cruel, they were a public execution of her truth. Ellie, at 28, had only recently come out as a lesbian to her family, and Mark's reaction was a brutal reminder of why she'd hesitated. She didn't argue. She couldn't. Her throat tightened as she wove through the crowd, their whispers trailing her like smoke. The bathroom was down a marble corridor, its heavy oak door a refuge. She pushed it open, the cool tile floor grounding her as she sank onto a plush stool near the sink. The irony wasn't lost on her. Seated by the toilet, as if her identity was something to flush away, she stared at her reflection in the gilded mirror, her hazel eyes brimming with tears she refused to let fall. She wasn't ashamed of who she was, but the weight of being so publicly shunned made her chest ache. The door creaked open and Ellie stiffened. A woman stepped inside, her presence commanding yet gentle. She was maybe a year older, 29, with short, wavy black hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through walls. Her navy blazer and cream blouse screamed academic, but the way she moved, confident, unhurried, felt like a quiet rebellion against the room's pretense. She paused, noticing Ellie, and her lips curved into a soft, knowing smile. "You okay?" the woman asked, her voice low and warm like a hearth in winter. Ellie's instinct was to lie, to say she was fine, but something in the woman's gaze stopped her. "Not really," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My cousin. He just humiliated me in front of everyone." The woman leaned against the sink, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. "I heard. I was across the room. Sounded like he was punching way above his weight class." She extended a hand. "I'm Claire." Ellie shook it, her fingers trembling slightly against Claire's steady grip. "Ellie. And yeah, he's a lot. Always has been." Claire's brow arched. "A lot or just an ass?" Ellie laughed, a small, surprised sound that broke the tension in her chest. "Both, I guess." She hesitated, then added, "He freaked out because I was looking at someone. A woman. He thinks it's wrong." Claire's expression softened, but there was a spark of defiance in her eyes. "Sounds like he's the one who's wrong. You don't owe him an apology for existing." The words hit Ellie like a lifeline. She wanted to say more, to spill the mess of her family's expectations, her small-town upbringing, the years of hiding who she was. But before she could, Claire tilted her head, studying her with an intensity that made Ellie's pulse race. "You don't belong in here, you know," Claire said. "Not by the toilet. Out there you'd outshine half the room." Ellie's cheeks warmed. "You don't even know me." "I'm good at reading people," Claire replied, a playful edge to her voice. "And I'm rarely wrong." The bathroom door swung open again, and a group of women in glittering dresses spilled in, their laughter jarring. Claire glanced at them, then back at Ellie. "Come on," she said, nodding toward the door. "Let's get you back out there. Show them you're not invisible." Ellie hesitated. The thought of facing the crowd again made her stomach twist, but Claire's steady gaze was an anchor. She stood, smoothing her dress, and followed Claire back into the fray. The party was a blur of faces and voices, but Claire stayed close, her presence a shield. They found a quiet corner near a towering window, snowflakes swirling outside against the Cambridge night. Ellie stole glances at Claire, noticing the way her blazer hugged her shoulders, the way her fingers brushed her hair back with effortless grace. There was something magnetic about her, something that made Ellie want to know more. "So," Ellie said, trying to sound casual, "you come to these things often?" Claire chuckled. "More than I'd like. I teach here. Political science. These parties are part of the deal." Ellie's eyes widened. You're a professor? At Harvard. Associate professor, Claire corrected, a hint of self-deprecation in her tone. Don't let the title fool you. I'm just a nerd who loves arguing about justice. Ellie laughed, but her mind was racing. Claire wasn't just some guest, she was part of this world. A world Ellie felt so out of place in. Yet here she was, talking to Ellie like they were equals, like Ellie's small-town roots and graphic design career didn't make her less. As the night wore on, they talked about art, politics, the way snow made Cambridge feel like a fairy tale. Ellie felt herself opening up, her guard lowering with every word. Claire listened, really listened, her eyes never leaving Ellie's. It was intoxicating, this feeling of being seen, not as a scandal or a disappointment but as herself. But then Mark appeared, his face flushed with champagne and indignation. Ellie, you're still here? He slurred, his voice loud enough to draw stares. I told you to stay out of sight. Claire stepped forward, her voice calm but steel-edged. She's not your property, Mark. And this isn't your personal kingdom. The room seemed to hold its breath. Mark's eyes narrowed, but before he could retort, Claire took Ellie's hand, her touch warm and sure. Let's go, she said softly. You don't need this. Ellie's heart raced as she followed Claire out of the hall, the cold night air hitting her like a revelation. They stood on the snowy steps, their breath visible in the moonlight. Ellie didn't know what was happening, but she knew one thing. Claire was different. And maybe, just maybe, so was she. The Cambridge streets were a canvas of snow, each flake catching the glow of streetlights as Ellie and Claire walked side by side. Ellie's emerald dress was no match for the biting cold, but Claire's presence warmed her in ways she couldn't explain. They didn't speak at first, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions, but it wasn't uncomfortable, it was alive. Claire broke the quiet, her voice soft but clear. You didn't deserve that back there. No one does. Ellie tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, her breath clouding in the air. I'm used to it. My family. They've never really gotten it. Me being gay, I mean. Mark's just the loudest about it. Claire stopped walking, turning to face her. The streetlight cast a halo around her dark hair, and her blue eyes were fierce with something Ellie couldn't quite name. You shouldn't have to get used to it, Claire said. You're not a problem to be fixed. Ellie's throat tightened. No one had ever said that to her before, not with such conviction. She wanted to believe it, but years of whispered judgments and family dinners laced with disapproval had built walls she didn't know how to tear down. It's not that simple, she said, her voice cracking. Back home in Ohio it's like, I'm the family's dirty secret. I thought coming here to Mark's big Harvard moment would be different. But it's just the same crap, fancier setting. Claire's jaw tightened, but her gaze softened. Then let's make it different. Right now. She gestured to a small cafe across the street, its windows glowing with warmth. Come on. My treat. Inside, the cafe smelled of coffee and cinnamon, its wooden tables scuffed from years of late-night conversations. They settled into a corner booth, and Claire ordered them hot chocolates piled high with whipped cream. Ellie couldn't help but smile as Claire teased her about her whipped cream mustache, the tension from the party melting away with every laugh. As they talked, Ellie learned more about Claire. She'd grown up in Boston, the daughter of a single mom who'd worked 2 jobs to send her to college. Claire had fought her way into Harvard, first as a student, then as a professor, her passion for justice driving her every step. But she was open about her struggles too, about being one of the few openly queer professors in her department, about the subtle slights and outright hostility she sometimes faced. It's not easy, Claire admitted, stirring her hot chocolate. But I've learned to carve out my space. You have to, or the world will carve it for you. Ellie nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. I want that. To not care what people think. But it's hard when it's your family. Mark's my cousin, but he's always been like a brother. Losing him. It hurts. Claire reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on Ellie's. The touch was electric, sending a shiver through her. You're not losing yourself, Claire said. And that's what matters. You're allowed to be you, Ellie. All of you. For the first time in years, Ellie felt like she could breathe. They stayed in the cafe until it closed, talking about everything and nothing. Ellie's love for graphic design, Claire's obsession with old jazz records, their shared hatred of pretentious academic jargon. When they finally stepped back into the cold, Ellie didn't want the night to end. Claire walked her to her hotel, a modest place a few blocks from campus. At the door, Ellie hesitated, her heart pounding. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely steady. "For tonight. For seeing me." Claire's smile was soft, but her eyes were intense. "I see you, Ellie. And I like what I see." Before Ellie could respond, Claire leaned in, her lips brushing Ellie's cheek in a kiss that was both gentle and bold. It was fleeting, but it set Ellie's skin on fire. Claire pulled back, her expression unreadable. "Get some rest," she said. "And if you want to talk more, you know where to find me." Ellie watched her walk away, her navy blazer disappearing into the snow. She touched her cheek, the ghost of Claire's kiss lingering. Back in her room, she lay awake, replaying the night. Claire wasn't just a professor, she was a spark, a challenge, a possibility. But doubt crept in. Could someone like Claire, so sure of herself, so rooted in this elite world, really want someone like Ellie, who felt like she was always running to catch up? The next morning, Ellie woke to a text from Mark. "We need to talk. Meet me at the campus cafe at 10. Her stomach churned. She didn't want to face him, not after last night's humiliation. But she also couldn't run forever. She dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a sweater, something that felt like her, not the polished version she'd tried to be at the party. The cafe was crowded with students, their laptops and coffee cups cluttering every table. Mark was already there, his face a mix of guilt and defiance. He didn't apologize, not really. "I overreacted," he said, his tone clipped. "But you need to be more discreet, Ellie. This is my world, my reputation." Ellie's hands clenched under the table. "Your reputation," she said, her voice low but sharp. "What about me, Mark? What about my right to exist?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "You don't get it. This place, it's cutthroat. People talk. I can't have them thinking." "Thinking what?" Ellie cut in. "That you have a lesbian cousin? That I'm human." Mark's silence was answer enough. Ellie stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm done hiding for you," she said, and walked out, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and freedom. Outside, the campus was alive with students rushing to classes, their scarves bright against the snow. Ellie's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Claire. Coffee later? I know a place with better hot chocolate." Ellie's lips curved into a smile, her heart lifting. Maybe she didn't have to face this alone. The new cafe Claire had chosen was tucked away in a quieter part of Cambridge, its walls lined with mismatched bookshelves and fairy lights. Ellie arrived early, her nerves jangling like loose change. She'd spent the morning replaying her fight with Mark, each word a fresh cut, but Claire's text had been a bomb. Now, sitting at a small table by the window, she watched the door, her heart skipping when Claire walked in. Claire looked different in daylight, less polished, more real. Her navy sweater hugged her frame, and her short black hair was slightly mussed, as if she'd been running her hands through it. She spotted Ellie and grinned, a warmth in her eyes that made Ellie's chest flutter. "You look like you're plotting a revolution," Claire teased, sliding into the seat across from her. Ellie laughed, the sound easing her tension. "Maybe I am. Just walked out on my cousin. Told him I'm done hiding." Claire's eyes lit up with approval. "Good for you. That takes guts." They ordered coffee and pastries, the conversation flowing as easily as it had the night before. Claire talked about her research on social justice movements, her passion infectious. Ellie shared stories of her small-town life, the art she created to escape it, the way she'd always felt like she was living in someone else's shadow. With Claire, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. As the afternoon faded into evening, Claire suggested a walk along the Charles River. The air was crisp, the river reflecting the golden hues of sunset. They walked close, their shoulders brushing occasionally, each touch sending a jolt through Ellie. She wanted to reach for Claire's hand, but fear held her back, not fear of being seen, but of what it would mean to want this, to want her. Claire seemed to sense her hesitation. She stopped by a bench, the river stretching out before them. "You're holding back," she said, her voice gentle but direct. "What's scaring you?" Ellie's breath caught. She looked at the water, its surface rippling with secrets. "You," she admitted. "You're everything I'm not. Confident, brilliant, part of this world I don't understand." I'm just a graphic designer from nowhere. What could you possibly see in me? Claire stepped closer, her eyes searching Ellie's. I see someone who's brave enough to be herself, even when it hurts. Someone who's real in a world full of fakes. That's not nothing, Ellie. That's everything. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Ellie's heart raced as Claire's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. The touch was grounding, electric, a promise of something more. Ellie didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her lips meeting Claire's in a kiss that was soft at first, then fierce, a release of everything she'd held back for years. When they pulled apart, Ellie was breathless, her cheeks flushed. Claire's smile was radiant, but there was a flicker of worry in her eyes. I need to tell you something, she said. I'm not just a professor. I'm on the fellowship committee. I know Mark's work. He's not as great as he thinks he is. Ellie's stomach dropped. You're saying he might not get the fellowship? Claire nodded, her expression serious. It's not my call alone, but his application's weak. If he finds out we're whatever this is, he'll think I'm biased. Or worse. Ellie's mind raced. Mark's fellowship was his entire world. If he lost it, he'd blame her, especially if he saw her with Claire. But as she looked into Claire's eyes, she realized something. She didn't care. Not about Mark's approval, not about his reputation. She cared about this moment, this woman, this chance to be herself. Then let him think what he wants, Ellie said, her voice steady. I'm done letting him control me. Claire's smile returned, brighter this time. They walked back to the cafe, hand in hand, the world feeling a little less heavy. But the next day, reality crashed in. Ellie got a call from her mother, her voice thick with tears. Mark says you're ruining his life, she said. He saw you with some woman, and now he's saying it's affecting his fellowship. Ellie, how could you? The words were a punch to the gut. Ellie sat on her hotel bed, her phone shaking in her hand. She'd known her family wouldn't understand, but hearing her mother's disappointment cut deeper than she'd expected. She wanted to call Claire to hear her voice, but doubt crept in. What if Mark was right? What if her choices were hurting the people she loved? She texted Claire anyway, her fingers trembling. Can we talk? My mom just called. It's bad. Claire replied instantly. Meet me at my office. We'll figure this out. Ellie arrived at Harvard's political science building, her heart pounding as she climbed the stairs to Claire's office. The door was open and Claire was there, surrounded by books and papers, her expression a mix of concern and determination. Tell me everything, she said, pulling Ellie into a hug. Ellie spilled it all, the call, her mother's tears, Mark's accusations. Claire listened, her hand never leaving Ellie's. When Ellie finished, Claire leaned back, her eyes fierce. Mark's using you as a scapegoat, she said. His fellowship was never guaranteed. He's lashing out because he's scared. Ellie nodded, but the weight of her family's judgment lingered. I don't know how to keep going when they all think I'm wrong. Claire took her hand, her grip firm. You're not wrong. You're enough. And I'm here, okay? We'll face this together. Claire's office became Ellie's sanctuary over the next few days. They spent hours there, talking, laughing, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence as Claire graded papers and Ellie sketched on her tablet. Each moment felt like a rebellion against the world outside, where Mark's anger and her family's disapproval loomed like storm clouds. But with Claire, Ellie felt like she could weather anything. One evening, as snow fell outside, Claire put on a jazz record, the soft notes filling the room. Ellie watched her, marveling at how someone so brilliant could be so grounded. You're staring, Claire said, a playful smirk on her lips. Can't help it, Ellie replied, her cheeks warming. You're kind of perfect. Claire laughed, crossing the room to sit beside her. Far from it. But you make me want to be better. Their lips met again, the kiss deeper this time. A promise sealed in the quiet of the office. Ellie's fears didn't vanish, but they felt smaller, less consuming. With Claire, she was learning to take up space, to demand her place in the world. But the world had other plans. The next morning, Ellie woke to a flurry of texts from her mother, her aunts, even her grandmother. Mark had told the family everything about the party, about Claire, about how Ellie was ruining his chances at the fellowship. The messages were a chorus of guilt trips and accusations. each one chipping away at the courage she'd built. She showed the text to Claire over breakfast at the cafe. Claire's face darkened as she read them. "This is manipulation," she said, her voice low. "Mark's turning your family against you to save his own ego." Ellie nodded, but her heart ached. "They're my family, Claire. I can't just cut them off." "You don't have to," Claire said, her hand finding Ellie's. "But you don't have to let them define you either. You get to choose who you are." Ellie wanted to believe her, but the weight of her family's words was crushing. She spent the day distracted, her sketches lackluster, her mind stuck on the texts. That evening she got a call from Mark. His voice was cold, calculated. "I know about your professor friend," he said. "If you don't back off, I'll make sure everyone at Harvard knows she's playing favorites. Her career will be over." Ellie's blood ran cold. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice shook. "Try me," Mark replied. "Stay away from her, Ellie. For both your sakes." She hung up, her hands trembling. She didn't tell Claire about the call, not yet. She needed time to think, to figure out how to protect Claire without losing herself. But the fear was real. Mark had power here, connections, a reputation to wield. Claire had fought too hard for her place at Harvard to lose it over Ellie. The next day, Ellie avoided Claire's texts, her heart breaking with every ignored message. She walked the snowy campus alone, her thoughts a tangle of love and fear. She loved Claire, there was no denying it now, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her love was a liability, a danger to the one person who'd made her feel whole. That evening, she went to Claire's office, her resolve fraying. Claire was there, her desk cluttered with books, her eyes lighting up when she saw Ellie. But the light faded as she took in Ellie's expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, standing. Ellie took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "Mark threatened you. He said he'd ruin your career if I don't stay away." Claire's face hardened, but her voice was steady. "He's scared, Ellie. Scared people lash out. I'm not afraid of him." "But I am," Ellie admitted, tears spilling over. "I can't be the reason you lose everything." Claire crossed the room, taking Ellie's face in her hands. "You're not. You're the reason I'm fighting harder than ever. I love you, Ellie. And I'm not letting him take that from us." The words hit Ellie like a tidal wave. Love. It was real, raw, terrifying. She kissed Claire, pouring every ounce of her fear and hope into it. But even as they held each other, Ellie knew the storm wasn't over. Mark's threat was real, and her family's judgment was a weight she couldn't shake. She had to make a choice. Protect Claire or fight for the life she was just beginning to imagine. Ellie spent the next morning pacing her hotel room, Mark's threat echoing in her mind. She loved Claire, those words had changed everything, but love wasn't enough to silence the fear. If Mark followed through, Claire could lose her position, her reputation, everything she'd worked for. Ellie couldn't let that happen. But walking away felt like betraying herself, like letting Mark win. She called her mother, hoping for a lifeline. "Mom, I need you to listen," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm in love with someone. She's amazing and she sees me for who I am. Why can't you?" Her mother's silence was deafening. Finally she spoke, her voice heavy with disappointment. "Ellie, you're making this so hard. Mark's under so much pressure. Why can't you just be normal?" The word stung, but Ellie didn't flinch. "I am normal, Mom. I'm me. And I'm done pretending otherwise." She hung up, her heart pounding with a mix of pain and clarity. She wasn't going to let her family's fear define her anymore. She texted Claire, "Meet me at the river. I'm ready to fight." They met at the same bench by the Charles, the water glinting under the midday sun. Claire looked tired, her eyes shadowed, but her smile was unwavering. "You okay?" she asked, taking Ellie's hand. "No," Ellie admitted. "But I'm here. And I'm not running." Claire squeezed her hand, her gaze fierce. "Then we do this together. Mark's threats are empty if we don't let them control us." They made a plan. Claire would disclose their relationship to the fellowship committee, ensuring transparency. It wouldn't stop Mark's accusations, but it would take away his leverage. Ellie, meanwhile, would confront Mark directly. She wasn't sure she had the strength, but with Claire beside her, she felt like she could face anything. That afternoon, Ellie found Mark at the faculty club, where he was schmoozing with professors. She walked up to him, her heart in her throat. "We need to talk," she said, Her voice steady despite the fear. Mark smirked, but his eyes were wary. What, here? In front of everyone? Yes, Ellie said, loud enough for heads to turn. You don't get to bully me anymore, Mark. I'm not ashamed of who I am, and I'm not hiding for you. The room went quiet, every eye on them. Mark's face reddened, but Ellie didn't back down. You threatened Claire's career because you're scared of losing your precious fellowship. But you don't get to control me, or her, or anyone. Mark opened his mouth, but no words came. Ellie felt a surge of power, of freedom. She turned and walked out, her head high, Claire's proud smile waiting for her at the door. The fallout was swift. Mark's fellowship was denied, not because of Claire, but because his work didn't measure up. He left Cambridge in a huff, blaming everyone but himself. Ellie's family didn't call, but she didn't expect them to. She'd made her choice, and it was Claire. Months later, Ellie moved to Boston, her graphic design business thriving with Claire's encouragement. They built a life together, not perfect but real. Ellie learned to forgive her family, not for their sake but for her own peace. And every time she walked by the Charles with Claire's hand in hers, she felt it. The strength to be herself, the courage to love without fear. One evening, as they sat by the river, Claire pulled Ellie close. You know, she said, her voice soft, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Ellie smiled, her heart full. Right back at you, she said, and kissed her, the world fading away. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving, two women who'd found each other in the chaos, who'd chosen love over shame, and who'd never looked back.